Greetings and welcome to my talk on insects and music videos. I'm Dr. Coelho from Quincy University. This work falls into the discipline of cultural entomology, which might sound a little superfluous, but if you're aware at all, there's potentially an insect apocalypse underway, and different studies from around the world have shown a collapse in insect communities. And cultural entomology may have a role to play here because it's a science that tries to understand how we relate to insects, how we perceive insects, and how that's expressed through cultural artifacts like literature, art, and in this case, music and video. I've been working in this genre for about 20 years, mostly focused on different aspects of music. So my goal here was to use video because it's a relatively new medium. So it would give us sort of fresh perspectives of human perspectives on insects. And music video has actually been around for a long time, since the early 20th century, but it really took off, of course, in 1981 with the launch of MTV. By the way, the first video they played, as you may know, was Video Killed the Radio Star by the Buggles, whose name, of course, is an insect pun, and it was actually a ripoff of the Beatles, which is another insect pun. So insects go way back when it comes to music videos, and we'll see that throughout. So I was hopeful, knowing a few as I did, that videos would reflect some insect attitudes. So how do you proceed with a study like this? Well, you have to find a way to get data, and these days pretty much all music videos are on YouTube, and almost all of my data come from there. I drew on my previous work in insects in rock and roll and in cover art, and I basically searched for every song that was in my data from those studies and every album that was in those data as well. I also had a list of insect terms like butterfly and cockroach that I could enter in the search engine of YouTube. Now, if that sounds like a lot of work, it is, but fortunately, I have minions, right? I have students that I was able to put to work on this project. My entomology class from the fall of 2020 seemed to be more than happy to spend a lab or two watching videos on YouTube, especially when it's cold outside and you can't catch bugs. All right, so once we found a video that had some insects in it, I wrote down the artist, the album, if there was one, the song title, the year the song was issued, and then I evaluated the types of insects that were present, any themes that were present with those insects, and I wrote a brief description of the video just for my own purposes. In the end, I came up with 234 videos, which is not a bad sample size. And I say insect, but I also include arthropods like spiders and scorpions and centipedes and millipedes and a few other oddball things, but not crustaceans. All right, so in these data, 4% of the artists had insect names, which really isn't that many. 13% of the albums had insect names, but half of the videos had an insect in the title of the song. Usually, you know, the actual insect that was seen in the video. So, you know, if a song had an insect in the title, it had a good chance to have an insect video. There were a few repeat offenders here. Groups like Alien Ant Farm had 6 appearances in the data set, but only because they showed their logo, if briefly, during the video, and that logo is seen here. The same was true of moon crickets, but that wasn't true of all of them. So Die Antwoord, which is a South African hip-hop group, actually had 6 appearances in the data, and every video was different and used insects differently. Their stated goal is to shock people, and I assure you they do. So if you want to see some very controversial videos, go ahead and check out Die Antwoord on YouTube. The others, like Jayani, she just likes to have pretty butterflies in some of her videos, so that wasn't terribly exciting. Finally, there were a lot of artists that appeared a couple of times, but more overall, you know, there was a lot of independence in the data. It's not like there were just a few artists making all the insect videos. So I'm happy with what I got there. Thanks. There were a couple of groups that really went all the way, and they did so by not only having an insect video, but the song had insects in the title, the album had insects in the title, the artist is named for an insect, and even the cover art for the album had insects. And you can see here Papa Roach's album Infest with Between Angels and Insects on it, and Wu-Tang Killer Bees from the album The Sting, which has a nice wasp on it. So I looked at the insects that were in the video and tried to identify them as well as I could. For the most part, I identified them to order, right? But I've translated the orders into popular English, so instead of Lepidoptera, I have butterflies and moths, which you can see is the most popular order, followed by ants, bees, and wasps, spiders and their allies, beetles, flies, mosquitoes, and maggots, grasshoppers and crickets, cockroaches, dragonflies and damselflies, mantises, cicadas, scorpions, centipedes, and there are some also-rans that are so rare that I left them off of this graph. So if we just look at the top end, we see right away that butterflies and moths are the most popular. Not terribly surprising, really. In my study of cover art, butterflies and moths were the most popular there too. So if you have a visual medium, you know, pretty butterflies make a great statement there. They're great exemplars for that kind of thing. And they, you know, provide fairly positivistic values. In second place, we have the ants, bees, and wasps. And there we have, you know, some favorable characteristics. You know, bees are pretty, even wasps are colorful. And bees are seen as charismatic, you know, they're associated with honey, and ants are associated with hard work, but there's the other side of the coin too. So you have the sting, you know, that bees and wasps are capable of. So in this group, they really play both sides of that. So they tend to be popular in any kind of music genre or any music medium that I've looked at. Third place, spiders and tarantulas, where, well, they're pretty much going for shock value. So you see tarantulas appear in videos, you see spiders appear in videos. If you look at The Cure's Lullaby, there's a big spider in the video, and in the end, the lead singer gets eaten by the giant spider. So there's obviously some creepiness involved there. So we can see that different groups are used to different purposes. The rest of them, you know, usually beetles, they're colorful, okay, fairly positive. Flies and mosquitoes, okay, usually negative. Grasshoppers and crickets are generally charismatic, so people kind of like those. Cockroaches, not so much, right? People generally don't like cockroaches, and so on. All right, so we can look at the insects that are present and say something about, you know, what values are represented. If we look at the year that the song was put out, not necessarily the video, then we see a distribution over time that reflects an increase in the number of videos, right? So insect videos are becoming ever popular. Well, probably it's just that the music industry has grown over time, which is, you know, not terribly surprising. And, you know, the number of insect videos has also grown over time. at least they haven't decreased, right? So they're keeping pace, maybe even increasing. The final word is not in, we're still in the middle of the last column of the histogram there. And most insect videos are more recent, although plenty of them do go back a ways. There we have Chubby Checker with Do the Fly from 1961. And even though it's not a modern era video, it's a performance that was recorded and is now available, so it counts as a video. And you can see him making the motion there of the fly, which is a dance. Next. Different themes that appeared in the videos that I looked for were these three. Number one being swarms, right? So a swarm or an infestation I counted as 4 or more insects in the video. So usually that's an attempt to be shocking or creepy in some way. And you definitely see that in this video, Locust by Machine Head, where swarms of locusts are constantly passing by the band. It's almost certainly has the most insects in a video of any of them that I found. But that's not true of all of them. Plenty of videos had lots of insects, but they weren't presented in really negative ways. So even though 25% of videos had swarms in them, it really wasn't that threatening. Second theme was chimeric insects. Now a chimera is a species mixture. So usually it was an insect human of some kind, and most of the time it takes the form of somebody wearing an insect costume or having insect wings or something like that. And there were fair numbers of those, but even those weren't really that threatening. Most of them were fairies or something of that nature, not like the human fly, which would be really gross and scary. So those themes were not terribly negative. The third one, giant insects usually are presented in a negative light because giant insects are unexpected, so they're the themes of lots of old horror movies. But even in this image, which I took from The Offspring's recent song, Let the Bad Times Roll, the giant cockroach, he's just getting some therapy there, and he never threatens anybody in the video. Is really not in it for that long. So there weren't that many giant insects, and most of them weren't that threatening. One of the things that I saw throughout the videos fairly frequently was animation. Now, it's been said that animation of insects in cinema is rare because it's hard to do, right? You've got 6 legs, you've got 2 antennae, you've got 4 wings in most insects, so that's that represents a lot of work to do animation. But it turns out that it showed up quite a bit. Even in styles like claymation and stop motion, which are a lot of work and a lot of time and a lot of expense, those were fairly common. And CGI is not cheap and easy either, and there were plenty of those. In the still that I'm showing here, that's a claymation video from the Psychedelic Porn Crumpets, an Australian group that actually turned out to be really good. As an aside, I did discover some new groups by doing this study that I like a lot. I also discovered some that I never want to hear again. So there's a broad spectrum of music that's using insects. All right, so we do get plenty of animation. Maybe we get a lot of animation because live insects don't necessarily do what you want them to, which is not surprising. Still, there's a fair number of live insects in the videos. From this still here, we have Missy Elliott's Work It, and we have bees on a turntable on some vinyl. So they're not expected to do much, and most of them don't. But what live insects do is allow us to look at potentially identify the actual species present. And I did quite a few. I'm not going to give you the whole list here, but some that you might be familiar with. Monarch butterflies, most people know those. Everybody knows honeybees. A lot of people know, hissing cockroaches, mealworms, and Atlas moth is the largest moth. So most of the species that you see that are live insects are pretty common, usually insects that are easy to get because they're reared in culture, like mealworms or hissing cockroaches. So you don't see too many unusual insects in those live ones. Insects are quite diverse, and some videos took advantage of that. So we have 10 orders appearing in 2 different videos. Shown here, Darth Nater's The Insect Song, which kind of makes sense, and Boxcar's Insect, right? So some videos used a number of different insects throughout the video and really made a lot out of that. Some topical subjects did appear. You might be aware that brood 10 of the periodical cicadas emerged last summer and got a lot of press, and sometimes musicians take advantage of that. So Tracy, I think that's how you pronounce it, produced a video and a song called Cicada Serenade, and previous emergences of periodical cicadas also inspired music videos, like Cicada Rock 2020, which was brood 9 from Southern Culture on the Skids. Now, I've actually seen Southern Culture on the Skids live, and they're really, really good rock bands, so you gotta love them. They also have other insect songs like Green-tailed Fly, so there's a history there. Lloyd Miller's 17 Years a Cicada Love Song, also positive implications for cicadas. Some people love periodical cicadas. Some people do hate them, but apparently that's a minority. So we have the song Sick of Cicadas, which expresses some mildly negative feelings about them. Next. Another trendy subject in the insect world, murder hornets, which of course were never called murder hornets until last year. They're Asian giant hornets, Vespa mandarinia, which have been well known to entomologists for many years because they're pretty spectacular. I actually have a couple in my collection. But these made so much press that 3 different videos were made about these insects, and that's just a graphic that I pulled off the internet. You can see their size relative to honeybees, and they are kind of large and scary, but they're also, kind of tame, and they're really not very aggressive, and their sting is not that powerful. Incidentally, I think for all 3 of these, there's a song, but there's no album, which is another common thing. These days, anybody can record a song, anybody with a computer and a microphone, and you can make a video and put it on YouTube, so there isn't necessarily a recording contract or a CD involved. So you might think all these insect videos are kind of weird and a niche genre, but in fact, what I hope to show you here is they've actually been very successful. As we saw, MTV came on the air in 1981. In 1984, they presented their first special on Video Music Awards, right? And the first video to win a VMA was the video You Might Think by the Cars, which for a good part of the video features Rick Ocasek's head mounted on an animated fly. So that's an insect chimera, right? It's definitely in the data. So right away, boom, we have success with insect videos. Other winners through the following years, Jamiroquai, Missy Elliott, which we saw a little bit of earlier, and even Taylor Swift, although I have to admit, that video has a brief glimpse of an insect tattoo on her back near the end of the video, so still counts, but not a dramatic use of insects like the other ones were. Other awards, Tears for Fears won Best Visual Effects for Sowing the Seeds of Love in 1990. And if you've seen Gone Daddy Gone by Gnarls Barkley, it's really fascinating. There's some, CGI fleas and stuff. It's really cool throughout the whole video. And they got a Grammy nomination, but sadly, as far as I know, no insect videos actually won a Grammy. Some of the songs that had insect videos were quite popular themselves. That is, I have a list here of #1 songs. Now, #1 means different things because we have so many different charts that we can access, right? So I have a little list at the bottom of different ones. So all of these scored #1 in one or more of those charts, including familiar ones like Blind Melon's No Rain. That was the one we saw earlier with the little girl dressed as a bumblebee. Some other fairly popular ones. Well, of course they're popular. They were #1, right? Katy Perry, No Doubt, Linkin Park, Soundgarden, Talk Talk, Tears for Fears, The Cars again. So these are all familiar groups from quite a diversity of genres. So certainly having an insect video hasn't hurt these groups, and we might even argue that it helped because that's a pretty big list. And that's just the #1s. I didn't go down to, top 10s or anything like that. So what can we conclude from a study on insect videos? Well, what we see over and over again is, yeah, sure, there are cases where insects are used for shock value and to gross you out and to be overall negative. But I think the balance is that positive representations of insects were used, and the themes that were shown were overall positively charismatic. People sometimes went to great lengths to use insects, creating animations, CGI, just to get the bugs in their videos. So it's not like, it was some cheap alternative. It was very intentional. A lot of the insect songs were very popular. The reason that most groups put out videos is to help sell the song. So, obviously insects are helping sell songs in many cases, resulting in a high degree of economic success. So this gives me hope that in the future we'll have improving human perceptions of insects. Maybe it won't be see a bug, spray a bug like it has in the past, and maybe people will care a little more, right? We can have some Franciscan values, which is what QU is all about. Finally, the study upon which this talk was based is published, and you can access it online for free, and that's shown in that upper link there. And then I thought, well, people might want to see some of the videos, so I made a list of the 10 best, in my opinion, totally subjective, insect music videos in the second link. And in the third link, I have as much of the data set as I could get. By now, some of them have been taken down, sadly, so they're no longer accessible, such as the nature of the internet. But if you want to, go down that rabbit hole, almost all of them are there for you. Thank you very much.